I'm out here worried. I was like, do these guys just want the entire company? And I basically work for them. Medicine, I feel, is very, very high skilled blue collar work. Insulin was a magic drug.
Still is.
Still is, yeah. It was like, you can just give this and then a diabetic is better. They first administered it to kids with type 1 diabetes, and they pretty much saw these kids get up from the dead, basically. Every hour you waste in the emergency room is like $100 lost. For every hour you don't put a patient on that bed, that could have been another billed service. I think the biggest hurdle right now is creating something that's intuitive enough and fits seamlessly into the physician's workflow.
Welcome, you're listening to the Caravan podcast. Today we're joined with Dr. Suhaib Hashem, the founder of Luminar. In this episode, we're going to talk about his journey of undergrad, pursuing a master's, and then finally a PhD. His focus is being in non-invasive medical devices, and now most recently being accepted into the Henry Ford Accelerator program. In this episode, we'll learn a little bit more about what led him pursuing entrepreneurship instead of sticking to corporate. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Caravan podcast. Dr. Hashem joining us today here in Boston. You staying warm?
Alhamdulillah, man. Yes, we are.
Well, you're from Michigan.
I am from Michigan.
Born and raised, or
born and raised?
Okay, so you should be attuned to
very
this
attuned, but this is a worse winter than it has been in the last 5 years.
Okay, so I'm not being a baby as a Texan.
No, this is.
I was texting a friend that's also coming in for the conference here in Boston, and they're from New York, and I was like, "It's a blizzard." I'm like, "This isn't a blizzard though, right?" That's
it's almost a blizzard.
Almost a blizzard.
It's almost a blizzard.
Almost a blizzard. Okay, so I'm not crazy. Well, besides all of that, I know we met late last year, and so I'm glad that we were able to finally sit down. You were cooking some stuff up back then, and it seems like you were actually fully cooked up something big. So could you run us a little bit on your background on what you're building currently?
I recently finished my PhD from USC in biomedical engineering in May of last year. And, subhanAllah, it came at a time when NIH funding cuts hit and tariffs hit at the same time. So my industry contacts all disappeared, and then my postdoctoral interviews all got canceled. But I was hopefully going to go to the Cancer Hospital, University of Michigan, to do some research over there. And then I had a lot of friends who were around me convincing me not to go for a job and to just push towards the startup life instead. And
did they have context that you had an idea or that you were working on something? Or?
No. So actually back then I didn't have an idea. It was like a couple months before I graduated. They kept telling me don't apply for jobs, just try to get into a startup. And I really didn't like the idea of going for a startup for the sake of going for a startup without having something worth working on.
This is in 2025 or?
This is early 2025. This was around March. And then I defended in May. But it was
your PhD.
I defended my PhD in May, yeah. And then it wasn't. It was sometime in March that I found an idea that I thought might be worth working on.
Yeah.
And I started sort of doing some work on the side, which was pretty stressful while trying to finish up my thesis.
What was your PhD in?
My PhD, the degree was in biomedical engineering, but the topic was on using intermittent hypoxia and hypercapnia to explore dynamic cerebral autoregulatory effects in people with dementia without dementia.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll just tell you that right now.
Yeah. Basically, we gave old people different mixtures of gases, and then we saw how their brain reacted to it in hopes of either creating a therapeutic for dementia and Alzheimer's or understanding and diagnosing dementia and Alzheimer's. But it was a really interesting project. I had a lot of fun working on it. So I had this idea back in March. I worked on it while writing my thesis up until May. I was also low-key on the side, still applying for jobs, still applying for postdocs. Right. Nothing was panning out. And so I decided to sort of go full send on the startup world. I stopped applying for jobs. I found some data sets through some sort of academic resources to test this idea and see if it was worth working on.
Yeah.
It felt viable from a business perspective and from a technical perspective. And then, I moved back to Michigan in October not October.
And you're in
August
California?
27th. I was in Los Angeles.
Los
yeah.
Angeles. And okay, so you were pretty much at this tail end point of like your PhD. You're trying to figure out what your next steps are.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship, corporate, research.
Yeah.
Doors are kind of shutting down, right? Research is closing down because of government reasons.
Yeah.
Corp is still there, but
Yeah.
entrepreneurship is there too. Now, I feel like when people go into like biomedical anything, those are very two hard words put together. It's just academia wise.
Yeah.
But when you were younger, was this kind of the trajectory that you kind of set out for yourself from the jump? Your parents, like, what was like the influence? Because usually within our spaces, it's like, you know, you go buy a degree or whatever and become a physician or an engineer or vice versa, right? And what kind of laid you down this path? Like, oh, I'm going to go do a PhD.
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting. I actually didn't know I was going to do a PhD up until I was basically doing a PhD. So when I was an undergrad, I shadowed a lot of physicians, and obviously, you know, mashallah, a lot of our community members, family members, and so on are physicians. And I loved the aspect of human biology. I loved the aspect of, you know, medicine and the study of medicine. I just could not personally handle clinical practice. It felt very routine. It felt like by the book. And this impression that I had that it was an intellectually stimulating field was sort of fading away. But I still wanted to do something in the medical space. And so I happened to be majoring in biomedical engineering. And to be honest, the only reason I was majoring in biomedical engineering was because when I came into undergrad as a pre-med, there was another guy I knew that was doing pre-med biomedical engineering. And I was like, this sounds cool. I never done anything engineering-wise prior to that.
Why couldn't it be someone studying like history or English? Well, it's a little bit easier for that pre-med
You know, to be honest, if there was, I probably would have done that. It was so arbitrary, but it was the only guy I knew at the university. He got there a year before me, and I was like, hey, he's doing this. This sounds like a good idea. Might sound good on applications. Why not? Turned out to be a very hard degree. You know,
did you have siblings, older siblings at all, or are you a single child? Or?
I did have older siblings. My older brother is 5 years older than me, but he was too far ahead for me to sort of use that, engage that as a metric.
Yeah.
But he was going into med school at the time.
Okay, so he kind of went the biomedical route as well, or became
he didn't do biomedical engineering as a degree, but he just did like biology as a bachelor's degree, and then went into medicine and so on. My sister is 2.5 years older than me, and she was in psychology, so it was like sort of outside of the realm of what I wanted to work on. So it wasn't really something I considered. And then there was his friend.
Yeah,
you know?
And you're the youngest of three?
I am the third of six.
Third of six?
Yeah.
Why in the middle? Oh my goodness.
To ask my parents, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah. I mean, how is that? Because it's, you know, you're going to school, I assume, where you're not commuting, right? Because you
I was commuting.
You're commuting to school back then.
Yeah.
Was that hard being an older brother? Because your brother's obviously gone, you know, med school at that point, and then I feel like the responsibility just kind of trickled down. Right?
It did sort of trickle down because soon after I got into my undergraduate school, my sister left to do her PhD, and so I was the oldest sibling in the house for a while.
Oh, okay.
While they were all gone. But yeah, that was fine. It wasn't too hard. My brothers are pretty chill.
Yeah.
My younger sister's a lot younger than me. She's 15 years younger than me. So at the time she was still in
like a baby.
Basically. Yeah.
Okay. Well, when you were going into your PhD route, did you discuss with your sister who took that path as well?
I feel like I made the decision and then I discussed it with her.
You're like, I already have my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, partway through my undergraduate degree, because I was working in the engineering space, I noticed there was like this huge fissure between engineering knowledge and practice and clinical knowledge and practice. And so October of 2017, I had like some extreme stomach pain. I went to the emergency room, and then, you know, I was there for, you know, I want to say like 4 or 5 hours. And I distinctly remember how old all the devices that were there.
Like within your like patient room?
Within the emergency department.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is all like really, really old. And then so I like looked into it after I left. Alhamdulillah, it was nothing serious. And you know, there's a lot of there are places in medicine where innovation is like, you know, in the bleeding edge of technology. And then there's other places in medicine where they're still back in the 70s.
Right, like it's still antiquity.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I started to wonder why that was the case. And I was doing research at the time with one of my professors at the university. And I realized that the professors that would work on medical technology or medical devices were often unfamiliar with what was happening in the clinical world. So the projects that they would end up working on would only be, for the lack of a better word, the flashy stuff, right? Like people are working on imaging, they're working on MRIs, they're working on cancer.
Edge.
Yeah, they're working on the cutting edge, the stuff that looks like the hottest.
Right.
But there was like so many other places where medicine, I feel like, could have been improved for the betterment of patient care. But it was untouched because there really wasn't this someone to bridge this junction between those two spaces. And so that's sort of when I started thinking about, oh man, you know what? I want to work on medical devices.
Yeah.
That was like a little more than halfway through my undergraduate degree. And then I got really interested in non-invasive medical devices. Non-invasive meaning like, you know, doesn't poke or prod or surgical or anything. And then, you know, like, you know, a lot of people are familiar with the pulse ox, right? Like the finger oxygen thing.
Stuff.
And heart rate and whatnot. The
Got
pulse
one right
ox,
now.
yeah, exactly. Now we have them on our watches.
Yeah.
The pulse ox technology itself of using red and infrared light to determine oxygenation levels of your hemoglobin was developed in 1973. It came into clinical practice in 1975. It was from 2 Japanese researchers. And it has not seen innovation since.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, and we have a lot of things like that. Where
Does it kind of fall into like, if it's not broken, don't fix it mindset at times? Or
Well, I'm not saying to fix or change the pulse ox, but I'm saying to like expand and grow the technology itself.
The desire to still research and innovate.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
spaces that still exist.
Exactly.
That makes sense, yeah.
So I wanted to do that kind of thing, right? I was
Right.
like, you know, looking at things in photonics and optics, and you know, how does light interact with tissue, and how does electricity interact with tissue, or blood or ions or whatever. And then I realized that I do not have enough knowledge or information to be doing any of this. Like I was nearing the end of my undergraduate degree, and I was like, man, I learned all these topics. I took anatomy, physiology. I took organic chemistry. I took all the math classes. I took a bunch of engineering classes, and I don't know how to do anything.
Yeah.
You know, and it was weird. So
You feel like you're just missing a big puzzle piece.
I felt like I was missing a big puzzle piece. So I was like, I need to go to grad school. Like, this doesn't make sense. And then all the positions in industry at the time, if you wanted to do anything in research and development, you needed a master's degree at least. Now, my issue with the PhD is that I actually worked in 2 different research labs in my during my undergraduate degree. And the first research lab I worked in, I had a horrendous experience.
Oh, okay.
And I remember after leaving that lab, I was like, I'm never doing research ever again in my life.
Was it the people you worked with, or
It was mainly the professor who was in charge of the lab, the PI of the lab. She was very like unavailable. She wasn't there. She had expectations that she never really communicated.
Just no active coaching?
No active coaching. And I was like a sophomore at the time. I was like, I don't know what you want me to do.
And most of the time, people are there for guidance, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly. And then I joined my second research lab about a year later, and I like fell in love with it. It was in medical devices. It was in what we call medical instrumentation. And the professor basically was like, I have this master's student. She's leaving. You're going to take on her project, so you're going to learn everything that she knows how to do. And then I remember he used to come and sit at my lab setup like once a week or so. and he would be like, okay, like explain to me what you were doing. And he would recognize, like he would coach me and mentor me through that process while recognizing that I was the person who knew this device the most because I spend the most time with it. So it was really cool seeing that where, you know, he gives you space to learn and grow while also, you know, recognizing that you're putting in work towards something that you uniquely understand. And so I wanted to do more of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of incredible how just one person can really change your perspective on something as long as it can notice that you care and that they are also caring. I mean, one thing for me, like, so I did all of pre-med and just chose not to go to medical school. And, you know, chemistry was one of the worst classes I ever did, but I barely got through it.
Oh, I love chemistry.
But then I got into organic chemistry.
Yeah.
And people was like, oh, you're going to hate it if you hated chemistry. And I loved it. It's the best class that I've ever performed in across all of my college courses because how much the professor cared.
Yeah.
And he would always make himself available around the clock.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what helped me learn and then also drive me to, no, I can't fail because I don't want to let him down. He just spent 4 hours outside of class teaching me these things, right? But those shifts are critical. My brother convinced me not to do medical school, actually.
Oh, wow.
He's a physician. And then my mom also convinced me not to do medical school.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Tell for another day.
I had the opposite experience.
Yeah.
You know, I told my parents I wanted to go do I was looking for master's programs and, you know, I wanted to continue sort of in research.
Yeah.
And my dad every other day was like, are you sure it's not medical school you're looking for? Like, you know?
That's research too, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
It's just guided.
And so I went ahead and I tried to I had, you know, like I mentioned before, I felt like I couldn't do anything. And so the imposter syndrome was hitting heavy.
And you were at 22 at the time or 20?
I was 21.
21, okay.
I would think, or turning 22.
Yeah.
I finished my undergraduate degree right after I turned 22.
Okay.
So I guess I was 21 during like the application cycle.
Yeah.
And so like I had this crazy imposter syndrome when it came to sort of applications and where I can get in, and I didn't apply to that many schools. I applied to 5 schools
For your PhD?
for my master's.
For your master's, okay.
Because I was like, I'm not going to get in. And then, so the reason I didn't apply for a PhD was because of that crazy experience I had with that first professor.
Oh,
so I was like, when you apply for a PhD program, you normally, for most schools, you apply to a professor.
Yeah.
And so you just lock in that professor. And I was like, I'm not going to risk going with like a terrible advisor.
If you get a bad one, you're just stuck.
You're just stuck.
Or you have to just drop the program.
You either drop the program or you switch the professor and you waste 2 years.
It's such a gamble.
It's a very big gamble.
Because Jordan's like 7 years for a PhD, right?
Like 5 years on average. 5 years is like the
happy path.
The happy path.
Okay, 7 is like
So I knew that like if I got in with a professor that I didn't vibe with, like they could be doing some really cool research.
Yeah.
But if they were just,
you're locked in with this person for 5 years.
Yeah. It's a, you know.
You're going to go through a lot of experiences
100%.
in that time. Marriage, potentially kids. So
there's
things
a lot of
happen.
things. There's a lot of things. And it's like, can that person
understanding?
not just deal with you professionally, but also personally?
Yeah.
And so the decision that I made was that I was going to apply to the master's programs, and whichever I got into, I was going to go find a lab to work in. And if I liked it and I vibed with the professor, maybe I'll consider doing a PhD with him. If I didn't, I'll take the master's and leave.
That's brilliant.
That was my plan.
It's your way to scout.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, are you going to like rate my professor for this even going into the...
No, it's hard because it's like, you know, they can be teaching classes great. But then, you know, so my sister was doing her PhD at the time and she was giving me this like, it wasn't really much of a horror story, but it sort of gives you like an impression of the range. The professor was a great professor. People loved her. But then my sister would finish writing a paper. She wants to publish it, and it'll sit in her professor's inbox for 3 months waiting for revisions.
Well, it's outdated, I imagine.
I mean, in psychology, things don't get outdated that fast.
Yeah.
I think we're too used to nowadays where AI outdates things.
Now
that
this
fast.
AI is the best AI.
Yeah. But in a lot of different fields, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
Like, you know, dementia research doesn't move that fast.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
So it's like, but still, like, you know, that was just sitting in her inbox when it could have been
Published a long time ago.
You know, there's I have other horror stories from people who just had like nasty nasty advisors. But so I didn't want to take that risk.
Yeah.
So I was like, let me just apply to these master's programs. And I was very conservative about the places that I applied to, it was actually my professor's idea at the time to apply to USC because that's where he did his PhD. And I was like, oh, I'm not gonna get to USC, come on now. Like I didn't have that great of a GPA, and a lot of these academic institutions, that's what they value.
Mm-hmm.
They view it as like, for you to be able to do good research, it's like academic excellence. I want to see those A's. And I had like a very like tumultuous time when it came to my classes in undergrad.
Mm-hmm.
Like the average of my GPA in the first 2 years, this is personal, but we're gonna say it was a 2.7, and the average of my last 2 years was a 3.7.
Oh, huge growth.
Crazy growth.
Did you like learn how
But
to
the
read?
average
What
was
happened? That's crazy. I mean,
so
mine was the opposite. Mind you.
Really?
Yeah.
For me, it was learning how to control my ADHD symptoms.
Okay, so you kind of learned how to study. A lot of people in
Basically.
college go through that experience for the first time.
Yeah. So that was my first time figuring that out.
Yeah.
And it was great. As soon as I figured that out, like it was easy. So I'm applying to these schools, and I'm like, I really don't know if I'm going to get into anything. I end up getting into all the schools.
Alhamdulillah.
And the best school that was on that list happened to be USC.
Trojans. Okay.
Yeah. And so I was like, it'd be dumb to say no to this.
Now, our PhD, this is for the PhD program, right? Master's program.
Yeah.
Are those expensive?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they are expensive. And so it was a decision that I had to make. It was like, is this worth it? Is this not worth it?
How much is it usually?
At USC, it is $2,000 per credit hour.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's not fast. And how many credit hours are usually in a semester? Because I know undergrad's like, 13 to 18.
No. It's not like that. I believe 8 credit hours is considered full-time.
Full-time? Okay.
Yeah. But that's still pretty expensive.
I mean, for a student, right? That's insane.
It's still pretty expensive. Alhamdulillah, I was fortunate.
Yeah.
My parents were down.
Yeah. Were you married at that time, or?
Yeah, I had my nikah done in October of 2018. And I graduated December of 2018.
You were in undergrad?
I was an undergrad, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I had my life figured out at the time.
What the heck? That was crazy. How did you guys meet? In college, or?
Yeah, basically.
And you're like, all right, let's.
Yeah, I mean, like.
What? Okay, that's a, so you're making all these huge decisions, all this stuff while being. I mean, because I think like within our space is like, oh, go get this done, go make your money, then you get married, but. Money is the honey. I think that's what they say. I don't know, but like you're like, no, we're gonna do this now.
The thing is like, I was going through a pretty interesting time in my life, and people usually, when it comes to getting married, think that they have to reach a certain stage in their life.
Yeah.
Whether that be mentally or financially or so on, and to be honest with you, I don't think that you ever get to this perfect position where you're ready to get married. I feel like you'll always have something to work on mentally. And so if you play that game, you won't see yourself getting married.
You're just kicking the can.
Exactly. You're just kicking the can. I need to get better on this. I need to get better on this. I need to get better on this. And that's what I felt for like the majority of my life. And then at some point I was like, maybe that's part of it. Maybe that's part of just going through life, is that you're going to be getting better at things. And the moment you stop doing that is the moment things start to break apart, right? So I removed that from the possibility of the reason of me not getting married. And I told myself, I was like, okay, if I'm going to find someone, I would want to find someone with these characteristics. I happened to find someone with those characteristics, and then I had to ask myself the question of like, do you let this gem go and hope you find someone like them later when you're more ready in life, or do you just go for it right now? And I didn't want to take the risk, so I went for it right now.
Was family on both sides, were they pretty okay with that? Because I feel like sometimes like, the people who want to get married are just like, I'm fine. You're not, we're not at that stage or whatever. But I'm willing to wait and work it out. But then sometimes other voices now come in.
What's funny is despite being the third in my family, I'm the first to get married. It was a very easy conversation, alhamdulillah, with my parents. I just told them, I was like, yo, there's this girl, I'm trying to get married. And they're like, yeah, sure.
Parents, you hear that? It's good
Yeah.
advice. Yeah.
No, really, like
Yeah,
the more difficult you make it, it's and honestly, I had this conversation with someone on the plane today, actually.
Yeah. That was our third guy.
We were talking about like, a lot of times people look for someone who would complement their life choices in marriage. I haven't made life choices at that time of my life.
Yeah.
And so, we just ended up making our life choices together.
Okay, yeah.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So instead of if I was, let's say, in my 30s, inshallah this year, and I had to make a decision about who to marry, there's some blockers, right? Like I have to be here, I have to be doing this, they have to be giving this much time, and there's a lot more requirements that I would look for in a person. But when you're younger, you're more concerned. You're concerned about character in both stages of your life, but there's less emphasis on what you're doing in the stage of your life that you're in.
Weirdly enough, you have more flexibility to grow together.
Exactly.
Versus now you kind of found your way. You're kind of settled in.
Yeah. So I don't know what it's like to have my own room and decide how my apartment is supposed to look. And, because all of that stuff is done as a joint decision.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to me to make a decision in my life without consulting my better half. That's not something that exists within the realm of my thinking or my headspace.
You can't really have FOMO on something when you never really
exactly,
right?
Exactly. And on like a philosophical sense, I don't believe that our purpose in this dunya is to maximize, the facets of life or dunya in that regard.
Like having to do everything.
Exactly. I think we are burdened with responsibility, but that responsibility is a blessing.
Yes. Yeah.
Because that responsibility puts us in reality. And I think the more responsibility that you have, the more you exist in like a pragmatic reality.
So I think that, there's a lot of brothers who want to get married, right? Our age or younger.
Yeah.
And they do feel in that position of like, I have to have X, Y, Z of level of providence and things like that.
Yeah.
And let's say they did meet somebody great, right?
Yeah.
And that is something that they're really stuck on. What advice would you give in terms of to kind of push?
I got fortunate that I got married to someone who was okay to like tough it out.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Like, listen, I'm the startup right now.
Yeah, exactly. She was investing in me. She had like 20% equity. When that's the case, you realize like how little you need for you guys to just make ends meet. Like, it doesn't need to be that big.
Roof over your head and food in your belly. That's really...
Roof over your head and food in your belly. And, sometimes that means like right now, I finished my PhD. My wife is working as a nurse.
Yeah.
I'm living with my parents.
Yeah.
I have no shame in saying that. And it's like, if that's something that I'm able to take advantage of and it's not impacting my marital life or my relationship with my parents, then why not?
Yeah.
Right? Like there's no reason for me to try to live a life that's out of my reach.
And I think sometimes it's maybe the societal expectation that like when you hit this checkpoint, you have to leave the house, you have to go do this. It's like, but man, I know so many couples, Muslim couples too, that got married, did a big wedding on credit and are still paying that off. Yeah. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
you can get married and just
100%.
take it easy, right?
Yeah, no, man. Our nikah was at the masjid with like, sweets from the I don't know if you guys know what shatila is. If you've ever been to Dearborn, but it's like the premier dessert spot where you grab the boxes of baklava, and you just have on the side, and we had some cheese bread and whatnot. I did end up having a wedding in 2021, but that's because my parents wanted to have a wedding.
Yeah. But that's also a few years after the fact.
Yeah, and they wanted to have a wedding, but they also wanted to pay for the wedding.
Yeah.
So I was like,
that's yours. That's
I'll look pretty. I'll do what you need me to do.
So you're married. You're making these big life decisions. Was it, I guess, easy for your wife to kind of be flexible in this moment of time? Like,
she was the one encouraging me to apply to more places for my master's at the time. Like I remember a distinct conversation between me, my wife, and my mom in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And my wife is complaining to my mom that I'm not applying to more places, and then my mom's yelling at me to apply to more places. You
got both bosses.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, I don't know, like,
Did you feel like you were kind of falling into this? And this is a trope that I think a lot of entrepreneurs fall into in many parts of their lives outside of business, is rejecting themselves before giving the opportunity for someone to reject you.
Yeah, exactly. And it's something that, I've learned. The worst anybody can say is no. Mm-hmm. The worst they can say when you send an application is no. There's no reason for you to not apply to any program that you can get your hands on. But I think like I was sort of like burdened by this past of academic embarrassment, let's call it, that I let it take over my ability to strive and apply to more things that I had access to.
Do you feel like sometimes now, like as like a late 20 adult, right, where, and I think I fell into this mindset too, where I really identified my worth to my GPA.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think oftentimes now, even as an adult, sometimes I put my worth on what my salary is.
Yeah.
How do you move past that? Because you have this external factor that's determining your value, and then internally you may be feeling, super confident, but you're like, maybe I'm not who I think I am.
I think that really changed for me when I saw people put or assign worth to things that I found not worthless, but not as worthy.
Not as valued.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, one of the craziest things about finishing a PhD is that once you finish, it's very anticlimactic.
Oh,
it is incredibly anticlimactic. You do all this work, you do all this research, you get into a room with 5 faculty members, you present your work, and then they just say, good job, you passed.
Where's the Jersey Mikes?
Exactly. Like, it's not like, I feel like when you take an exam and you have to go open up the portal and you gotta wait, like there's more excitement to it.
Make sure it doesn't even look like you're cheating.
Yeah, exactly. And so like when I finished the PhD, on some level, I was like, that's it?
You walk out.
And then I saw how much stock people put into me having a PhD. And I was like, dude, it's not that serious. And then once I started to realize that, I was like, dude, none of it's that serious. Like how much you make is not that serious. And like all of these societal norms just started to crumble. And sometimes to maintain the societal hierarchy that we live in, we force ourselves to put importance on things. And I feel like, no hate to my doctors, but I feel like we do this with medicine, where they ingrain in you in medical school that you are the doctor, right? And the way you interact with patients and nurses and people in the hospital is you are given a hierarchy because of that degree. If you don't go into academia, a PhD doesn't really do that. Mm-hmm. The only thing you see is that people in the industry start to respect you a little more, and they take more stock in what you say because they're like, this guy's an expert. But then you think about it, you're like, who is this person to judge me as the expert? I don't even judge myself as the expert, right?
Yeah.
And so, like I stopped caring about the GPA and the salary and how much money you've raised and, all these other factors.
That's interesting, because I think oftentimes it may sometimes cloud your own ability to look at things with an open mind, because you're leaning so far on these other credentials, whereas are those credentials themselves are processing, getting it thoroughly legitimate. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Obviously, there's like, I don't want this to be like taken out of context, like, oh, like this guy doesn't believe in medicine anymore. No, that's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is like there is still a grace of going back to kind of what you're saying is, oh, they made the oximeter meter in the 70s. It's done. No, like it's great that we've done that. We can respect that, but can we make it better, right?
Yeah. You want my hot take on medicine?
Sure.
So we can really put a nail in this. Medicine, I feel, is very, very high skilled blue collar work. Yeah. It's like you were given a manual. Yeah. And you operate off of the guidelines in the manual and whatnot. It's not usually the position of the physician to create something new, which is fine, because we all have our spaces and whatnot.
That makes sense. I mean, I think a lot of it's like they're not, not as a doctor, but doctors, I'm hoping to not be your lab rat as a patient, what did you do for the 10 other guys that you fixed? Let's stick to that strategy.
Yeah.
Go to a PhD to get
exactly.
the lab rats, right? But I think that's pretty clear. So now when you're going through your PhD and you're finishing, you're wrapping it up, right?
Yeah.
And now is, in terms of investment, your wife coming in like, okay, we did all this.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm going to go do a startup.
Yeah.
How much does it make? What was that dialogue like? What was that like even with your family, right? Because, you had mentioned you going to PhD, that was a dip. And sometimes, when they hear startup, it's not really.
Yeah. It's a great question. My wife, mashallah, was like incredibly supportive. She was like, yeah, go for it. And I was like, dude, I don't know. I don't think you know what you're telling me to go for, but sure. Yeah. My parents didn't think it was real. My mom was like,
at least they're consistent.
Yeah. My mom was like, yeah, but you're still applying for jobs. And I was like, no. And, my dad actually, he's the one that set up like one of my first meetings with one of the physicians I've talked to about this idea. And after I set up after we had that meeting and, we were having dinner and I was explaining it to this doctor, and his eyes sort of like lit up. The doctor's eyes was like, oh, like this sounds like a really good idea. Then my dad was like, oh, yeah, this must be a really good idea. But that was sort of the frame of the conversations. Alhamdulillah, I think in terms of conversations, I think I had it pretty easy.
Yeah.
And at the same time, like, I think they saw that I was doing my due diligence prior.
You didn't come empty-handed.
Yeah, like I was doing my due diligence with the idea, but I also did my due diligence prior when it came to looking for jobs. I think the most important thing when it comes to any relationship with your wife, with your parents, communication, constant communication, maybe sometimes even being a little over communicative is key to getting them to accept what you're going to do next, right? Like if I didn't talk to my parents about the fact that, there was this postdoc position that I was considering, and, there was this guy, this engineering manager at Apple that I was talking to, and there was this guy at Dexcom that I was talking to, and then all of that really didn't pan out, but they're aware of the conversations that I was having, and, Ma, I have a phone call next week with this guy, make dua for me, or like, Pops, I have like this meeting with this guy, hopefully he can get me something here. They appreciate that you've put in the effort to do this kind of thing, And I remember the first time I got the startup idea, the first thing I did was call my dad.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, do you remember when we talked about this? And I was like, well, I looked at the numbers. There's this many cases. This is how often it happens. If I can do something and it can reduce the number of cases by this, then, the market looks this big.
Yeah.
But communication is key. It's not like I didn't spring this up on my wife one day where, I've never talked to her exactly. Like I've never talked to her about a startup before ever, and then all of a sudden I was like, "Hey, I'm going to do a startup. I have a job."
Ice cream shop. It's just lemonade flavor.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean that adds a lot of clarity, right? And I think when it comes to building a business and getting feedback, sometimes it's a scary position, especially from people that may not be in our spaces who have that understanding, but. Ultimately, trust goes both ways, right?
Yeah.
That one, you can trust to tell them, and then B, or get that they're honest feedback, and they can trust that you will share things as it comes, right?
Yeah, of course.
Now, so when it comes to medical related or health related things, right? Are you a solo founder?
Yes.
Okay, so oftentimes they say in business world, like solo founders is very difficult.
Yeah.
Get a co-founder. What is there? Did you want a co-founder, or were just stern on being a solo founder?
I mean, I had a conversation with a friend who was potentially going to be a co-founder, but he was going through a stage in his life where he really couldn't quit his job, and like his wife was about to give birth and so on, and he was like, I'm
coming up.
Yeah, 100%. And then he was telling me like, I'll quit my job and I'll start doing this full time when there's a product to sell. And then I was like, okay, the medical world sort of moves slower than the consumer world, right? This is not one of those things where there's going to be something to sell in a month. Right? This is going to be a little bit longer than that. There might be something to sell in a year. Right? Or in 8 months or whatever. And so we like parted ways very amicably. There was no hard feelings. And by the way, I still want this guy to join, even as a late co-founder. But I think one of the
how do you meet this person?
So he was one of the people telling me not to get a job to go for the startup.
Oh, wow. Like one of your first advocates.
One of my first advocates. And I remember when I had my idea, after calling my dad, I called him. I was like, yo, I have this idea. What do you think? And he's like, sounds cool. And then, we sort of like looked into it together. And then.
So he was there with you to whatever capacity he could be.
Yeah.
Without putting a firm commitment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I just know that if I couldn't get a firm commitment, then we're just setting ourselves up for hurt and for failure.
Exactly. The expectations on both ends aren't clear.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And I didn't want that to be the case, because when we initially talked about it, he said, I'll quit my job to work with you on this. And so I thought that was going to be like, oh, we're gonna grind this out together. And then I really couldn't find anyone as good as him as a co-founder, to be honest with you. And the main thing I was looking for when it came to a co-founder was someone on the business side. Technically, from the technical perspective, I feel like I brought everything to the table in terms of the clinical experience, the clinical access, the technology itself. But I was never comfortable talking to, or I've never had conversations with executives and with, directors and C-suites.
You had half the exposure, just not the other half, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I was sort of looking for someone to complement the other half. And I couldn't, which was fine. Yeah. And so I continued on my own. Right.
So where are you now currently? So you get this idea, you get validation.
Yeah.
You recognize you're having to go on this journey by yourself now. Were you considering, and were investments ever brought up within your network? Were you looking at Y Combinator or all these other?
Yeah, there was I was having conversations with people. I was recommended to some incubator in the Bay Area. I was recommended to Founders Inc.
Oh, right.
And then I didn't feel like they had enough medical related resources for me to go and take their money. So it didn't make sense for me to go there. I really wanted to find a space that'll help me crack the barriers of getting into a hospital rather than just looking for straight cash.
Can you expand on that? Because I think because this would be your first venture, right?
Yes.
A lot of first time founders, follow the money. They see a big check and they grasp onto that first thing that comes their way. What made you kind of take a second and pause and reflect okay, because I assume that amount of cash is probably the largest amount that you've seen in recent years, going from college to master's to undergrad, or
it was.
to PhD, right? So
it was for sure. I think, so first when it came to finding an idea, I had a few requirements of what this idea had to carry.
Okay.
The first was that it was a software, not a hardware-based idea, because that would come at a lower cost of execution. The second is I really wanted it to be within the diagnostic space, because that's what I was really passionate in. And the third is it had to have like business viability.
Yeah.
Right. It had to be able to be a business. Right. One of the unfortunate things about trying to innovate in the medical world is that sometimes when you come up with a better technology that might be useful to patients, sometimes that's not the most business worthy idea. Right. So alhamdulillah, I managed to find an idea.
Ain't that sad?
It's very sad. It's actually why, and I have this conversation with my dad a lot.
It's we can't save lives. It's not profitable.
Yeah, but it's why public funded research is so important.
Yeah.
Because there's no profit motive behind developing things in the public space. There was actually, for a period of time, even during my PhD, my professor recommended that I can even maybe take my thesis into a startup. Which was on trying to diagnose and create therapeutics for dementia. That project was really interesting and it was super promising, but it would have required millions of dollars and at least an extra 5 years of research, right? 5 years on a strict timeline because it would need longitudinal research. So I would need to bring in a patient or a cohort of patients on year 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 to
follow
track
the
progress.
journey.
Exactly. So it couldn't be shorter than 5 years minimum. And it would have needed I joined at the beginning of the dementia project when it started at USC, and that was a $12 million grant, and that was 5 years, right? I would need something similar, probably even more money, because in the private space, you can't pay PhD salaries.
Yeah.
You got to pay
Like actual
salaries. And you think about it from a business perspective, and it's like, okay, who's willing to give $15 million minimum on an idea that I don't even know is going to work? Now, I might have been able to find somebody, but was I willing to work on something that even I wasn't that confident in? The answer was no. Now, if I was able to do this in the public space, in publicly funded research, I can go and try to figure this out. And if it pans out, it'll be huge.
Massive.
It'll be huge for people who are suffering from dementia. But it wouldn't be a business, right? Because even as a device, if I create one device that's meant to diagnose dementia, business cost-wise, I'm selling you this device once, and you're going to use it on all your patients, right? Unless I do something scummy like have you subscribe monthly for the software of my device.
Black Mirror episode.
Yeah, exactly. subscribe monthly so you can use this dementia diagnosis device. Then it wouldn't be a viable business, because I'm going to sell it to you once. I'm going to sell it to hospital Y once and hospital Z once, and that's it.
Kind of being on the other end of the tunnel now from when you first started your journey, right? When you enter that patient room.
Yeah.
And you had that big question, why haven't these things, been innovated? Is it a little bit disheartening to kind of see a little bit like why that may be the case?
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head. The reason that isn't the case is because there isn't that much of the business viability isn't there.
Yeah.
There's no money to be made on it. And if there is money to be made on it, the margins are much slimmer than they would be in other areas.
This may be, and this is so relevant to today, especially with public funding, coming to a close in this country, and this
hopefully not
dwindled,
yeah.
And this is a little bit on the spot, question. So Dr. Hashem GBT here, is there an example of public research? If it wasn't for public research, we wouldn't have had this. And that's something that we all are familiar with, know about.
Insulin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, insulin, I believe, fact check me on this, was developed at the University of Toronto. I know it was developed at a university in Canada, I just don't remember. And insulin was a magic drug.
Still is.
Still is, yeah. It was like, you can just give this and then a diabetic is better. Right, so they first administered it to kids with type 1 diabetes, and they pretty much saw these kids get up from the dead, basically.
Wow.
That was developed through publicly funded research. MRI machines. Actually, one of my professors at USC, his advisor was the one who developed the MRI machine.
That's insane.
That is publicly funded research.
Wow.
I can go on and on.
That's like the derivative of any medical journey that you might need to go. Heart attack, stroke, everything. What path you need to go on.
100%. The MRI machine is like magic.
Literally.
Like it's like to what it's done to the medical field. And I can go on and on, man. You're probably going to start hearing about so many diseases that are going to be cured or taken care of using CRISPR. CRISPR came out of UC Berkeley, right? This is all publicly funded research,
Okay, soundbite here for Instagram Reels. Defend public research in 60 seconds.
Ah, shoot. That's hard, bro. What the heck? 60 seconds? Defend public research? I mean, I feel like you could piece all those parts together about the MRI and insulin and whatnot and be like, put a little tagline.
Yeah.
If not for public research, these wouldn't have not.
Are you against public research? All right, don't use insulin. Don't use an MRI. Go figure it out yourself.
Yeah. And public research has its problems. It's not without its faults, but it's instrumental that there is a way for people to research things that are not motivated by profit. So you can get all these, crazy advances in medicine.
Yeah. So taking us a little bit back here. So as you're kind of looking at different options, you mentioned Founders Inc. You're looking at what would be the best path for you. What was the direction that you're finding yourself leaning towards now in terms of finding someone that can...
So that's both like a personal, there's a personal and professional answer to that.
Yeah.
The personal thing is that my parents are in Michigan. I've been in LA for the last 6 years. Did 1 year of the master's program, and then I transitioned into the PhD program and did that in 5. So I really wanted to move back home. I felt that over those last 6 years, every time I flew back home, I started to see the impact of aging on my parents, and it was really like hard to see.
Right. And you and your wife were both living in LA at this time?
We were both living in LA at this time.
How old are your parents?
In terms of parents, they're not that old.
Okay.
But I started to see them get older, if that makes sense.
The visual differences are happening.
Yeah, my dad is turning 59 this year.
Oh, they're young.
And my mom is 22. I'm joking. My mom is 56.
Okay.
My mom is 56. She turned 56.
So late 50s. Yeah,
late 50s, yeah. But I've had young parents my entire life, and it was like, watching them go from spry.
The 40
adults
to 50 gap
Yeah.
is probably the biggest difference.
Yeah. And I started to, I had to experience that while not living at home.
Oh.
You get what I'm saying?
So it's like day and night.
Exactly. Like every time I came back.
Like months went by.
Months went by, exactly. Every time I came back, my dad's hip is hurting him.
Right.
I look at my mom walk up the stairs and I see her struggling a little bit, right? Like I notice like small little things changing. They're not as like spry as they used to be. Like things take a little bit longer for them to sort of, comprehend and respond to. And so I really wanted to move back, number one.
It's honestly a very emotional experience.
100%.
Because our parents, though human, are our heroes, regardless of the age that we're at, right? You could be 45 and your parents can be whatever age.
Yeah.
And if you're having a bad day, they're still going to try to figure out how to solve it for you.
Yeah.
And it is it brings tears to my eyes already, but it's a very weird thing to experience because as you get older and as you get more resources, you want to make life easier for them. Yeah. But they never drop the ball on making life easier for you.
Yeah, 100%. Right? 100%. Yeah, alhamdulillah for our parents, man. So that's the personal reason, which was like, I want to say 75% of it.
Yeah.
The professional side was...
Is your wife's family in Michigan?
They're also in Michigan.
Oh, okay. So
it made sense for both of us. Yeah. And her parents are older than my parents, so she's the youngest.
Okay.
So like,
but same city in Michigan?
Like 15, 20 minutes apart,
okay.
basically.
Yeah.
It's like Plano and Richardson.
Yeah.
So the professional reason was that, like I told you, Founders Inc. did have a lot of money. A lot of these accelerators did have a lot of money, but they didn't have the sort of like medical resources I was looking for.
Like for your niche, yeah.
For my niche, and what I was doing is specifically involved in the emergency room. But I had a lot of medical resources in Michigan. I know most of the doctors in Michigan. The Henry Ford Health System, which was one of the largest medical systems in Michigan, 35% of the staff is Muslim. 35% of the staff is Muslim. I'm talking physicians, nurses, everything.
Oh my goodness.
So like, these people are accessible within or they were accessible within my network. And I just put my trust in Allah and I was like, let's see where this goes. And subhanAllah, it ended out really well. So like that dinner I had with that one doctor, Muslim Arab doctor, and the reason I wanted to talk to him is because he had a startup of his own that he was doing through the hospital. And I was like, oh, like how did that work? Like, how are you doing this sort of joint venture with the hospital where they're helping you bring this thing to market? Like, what are they taking? What does it look like? And it was a little scary because he was like, yeah, they basically take half the company, the licensing rights, and then they license it back to me. And I was like, okay, that's a little crazy.
That's super predatory.
Yeah, a little super predatory. But then he like listened to my idea and he's like, you know what? You need to talk to Joe. And I was like, who's Joe? He's like, Joe was the director of the Innovation Institute at Henry Ford Health. And I was like, sure. Like we talked about before, I had a meeting with him the Friday after I met you in Dallas.
With Joe.
Yeah, with Joe, the director of the Institute.
Yeah.
So actually a few days before I came to Texas, I incorporated the company so I can have so I can put a name on a slide and have a pitch deck, right?
Yeah.
And so alhamdulillah, I went to that meeting. I presented the pitch deck, and it was like a 10-minute pitch deck.
How'd you come up with the name?
Luminar. Oh, the name is two parts to it. So I specifically am working within the context of looking at what we call pulmonary embolisms, which are clots that exist in the arteries of your lungs. Okay. Now the middle of the artery is called a lumen. Right? And Nur, outside of being my wife's name, also means to enlighten or to illuminate.
Yeah.
And so the idea is that we are helping diagnose this disease, so we are illuminating the inside of the arteries.
There's layers to this.
Oh, there's layers to it. Yeah.
Obviously, you told your wife that's her.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah. So I meet with him. I give him my pitch for 10 minutes. And he's like, I love this. The program manager was in that meeting, and he was like, hey, Xander, we want this on our portfolio. And he was like, you know what? There's this we're starting this accelerator with Michigan State, and we want to sponsor you to be in that accelerator. And he was like, yo, Xander, whenever the application comes out, send it to him. And I was like, oh yeah.
So it's like cruise control.
Yeah, straight up. And I was like, he was just saying all of this. And he was like, okay, good. This is what we're going to do. See you next time.
And it's a different deal structure than...
And so I didn't know.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm out here worried. I was like, do these guys just want the entire company? And, I basically work for them. And I get the application, and I read the top of the application. And it said, this accelerator program offers you $80,000 in services, a $20,000 check, with an opportunity to take advantage of $130,000 safe at the end of the 10-week accelerator. I was like, okay, what about the equity?
Yeah.
And it wasn't mentioned anywhere in the application, but I was like, whatever. They told me to fill this out. I'm going to fill it out.
Yeah.
Fill it out. I send it in, and I continue working on the idea. Right, I have my resources. I'm still sort of refining it. I'm collecting data from other sources, running algorithms, running so on. And after a few very long weeks, might I add, I get invited to an interview for the accelerator. And the interview was going to be with the director of the program from Michigan State and with Xander, who I've previously met with, who was through Henry Ford Health. And I forgot to mention, the most exciting part about the application that I saw was that they talked about all these resources, and then they had a line in there that said, this accelerator will also offer the opportunity to pilot your product with the Henry Ford Health system.
So you have your first customer.
Exactly.
Wow.
Piloting with the hospital is a very hard thing to get to.
And then to get it with one of the number one.
100%. It's a very hard thing to do. And if not for that resource, it would just cost a lot more money, right? Because you'd have to pay for it out of pocket. But for them being willing to do it for you is huge. It's worth more for me than any check I would have received from anyone else.
Yeah.
So I go into this meeting with the director of the MSU Accelerator program, which is titled, I believe, Conquer.
Okay.
The Conquer Accelerator. And I give a pitch, a little bit more refined than before. I talk about all the numbers and the business case and whatever, and he seemed very impressed. He liked it, and then he was like, do you have any questions for me? And I was like, yeah, how much of this company do you guys want?
Yeah.
And funny enough, he said, we want you to succeed. And so what we try to do is we're going to give you the same valuation that Y Combinator would give you, but we can only give you $20,000 because we don't have that much cash. So it was $20,000 at 1%.
Oh, wow.
And a $2 million evaluation.
Yeah.
which I was like,
so everything's proportionally
yeah, I was like, yeah, that's great. You know, that's not 50% like
and
the
you
other
also
guy.
get your first customer.
And I also get my first customer. You know, and then I thought about that doctor that's like giving up half his company and whatnot. To give you the reason why is because he is employed by Henry Ford Health.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, things of IP and whatnot are immediately owned by the employer.
Exactly, yeah.
I was not employed. I come in as a separate entity.
Okay.
And so things sort of looked a little different. So I was like, yeah, this sounds great. Like, it sounds really cool. And then he's like, yeah, sure, great. We'll get back to you.
Has there been other companies that have gone through this already, or is this like a very
great question. That's something I asked during the interview. This is their third health tech cohort where they've done Henry Ford Health and the Accelerator, the MSU Accelerator. And I asked, like, I was like, hey, what does the pilot look like? And he said, out of our program, so there've been 9 company cohorts so far. One of them just like didn't make it that far because they, from what he was saying, they were paying themselves 6-figure salaries and they ran out of cash quick.
Okay, obviously.
Yeah. Out of the 8, one of them was an education based platform, so they didn't really need to pilot with the hospital. The other 7 all piloted with the Henry Ford Health System within 6 to 12 months.
Oh wow!
So I was like, great.
That's
like
the timeline, yeah.
Yeah, like, you know, they all got to do what they wanted to do, and you know, he was very nice, and he was like, you know, we want to be your first check. We also want to be your first customer.
Yeah.
It's like music to my ears.
You're right. So what does money look like here, right? Like how do you sell this? How much do you sell it for? Like what is the road to?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think
because it's not, is it like Epic, right? Where you sell a software license to a hospital?
So this would be considered a software license because it's called a CDS, a clinical decision support tool.
Okay.
In which it hooks up to Epic.
Okay.
And it uses the back end of Epic to feed that information into the application and then produce a result. The way you price anything is you have to consider how much money am I making them or how much money am I saving them, right? That's why they would want to buy your product.
Yeah.
And you would demand a portion of those savings or of that increased revenue. Now, either you tie it directly to the savings to where you're like, oh, you know what? I'm going to save you
10 million.
Exactly. So I'll save you $10 million a year. You give me $1 million a year, right? Or you can tie it proportionally. Or you can just be like, hey, I know, right? We've done the numbers. This is going to save you $10 million a year. We will always want a flat 750 or $1 million or whatever, right? The proportional one is that if they save them 10 million, you'll make X. If they save them 20 million, you'll save Y, right? But then that'll come based off of how your product performs. If you can,
so you can kind of structure that as like a
and there's so many ways to structure it, right? Like you can even structure it to like, you know, every time I save you something or every time I generate revenue for you, I'll take X amount of dollars, and then we'll cap that contract at
a Y amount. Okay.
A Y amount.
Yeah.
We'll cap it at $1 million.
Okay.
Right? So this will never balloon past $1 million.
Yeah.
But it can possibly be under if I'm not saving you as much as you think I'm saving you.
Like you could save 100 million, but you'd only be paying me 2
Exactly.
million max.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's inshallah. But that's the way you structure these contracts. So
Okay.
you need to truly understand your customer and
like your actual addressable market within this diagnosis space.
And how much are you saving?
Yeah.
Right? And remember, you know, in the medical space, actually in most spaces, you won't be able to calculate all the externalities, right? You know, there's some things that are easy to calculate, like, oh, this is going to save 2 hours off of the length of stay for 10% of your patient population, right? If we give a dollar value to that 2 hours, right? We say every hour you waste in the emergency room is like $100 lost, for example.
Yeah.
So that's $200 for those two hours, and then 10% of your patient population is X. Therefore, I'm saving you this much. But there's so many things involved in that it might be more than $100. But that conservative estimate is what makes your customer feel confident that your numbers are legitimate.
Yeah.
Right.
So with your particular tool with Luminar, right?
Yeah.
What's the numbers there in terms of time saving that you'll be able to provide?
Yeah, sure. So the thing is like, you know, we're looking to save time on pulmonary embolism workups, right?
Okay.
When you order an image for pulmonary embolism, the patient is usually there for an additional 5 hours. Currently. And so, the math on that, the actual math that I've estimated is that each hour in the emergency room is around $300.
Just for waiting.
Just for waiting, right? Because for every hour you don't put a patient on that bed, that could have been another billed service.
Yeah.
Right? So you take the $300 an hour and you have 5 hours per patient. That's $1,500 for every test that you have to do, and most of those tests come back negative. So if there's a way to reduce those numbers of tests, you can save $1,500 per patient.
To make the testing go faster?
Yeah. I'm trying to direct people away from certain testing.
Okay.
So it's...
reduce... Okay,
I see. So reduce an unnecessary amount of testing. By doing that, then you can be like, okay, how many patients do you have that usually go through this test, right? And then if I can redirect 10% of them, right, this is what the numbers would look like.
Okay, so you are a filter.
Yeah.
An early filter. So like you are going in, you're a patient currently, you're a patient, they need to do this test, they immediately move you in, and then the bill is counting. You're coming in the middle saying, okay, does this patient really need this particular test?
Yes.
Your test
can they be somewhere else?
Yeah, and your test could take 5 minutes.
Yes.
And then immediately, okay, this person doesn't need to do this. We just now saved 4 hours and 55 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, which is approximately $1,500.
Okay.
Right. Now, that's one part of the money that's saved, right? But there's also other parts. The other part is like, I cannot calculate how much money they'll receive back from. So insurance has quality metrics.
Okay.
And they judge hospitals based off of these quality metrics. Those quality metrics include their average length of stay in the emergency room, their CT utilization, right? Like, so the utilization of their CT scanners. Like, if you're just testing everybody and under the sun, and I'm doing 1 million CT scans and only 1% of these people are positive, I'm overusing this test, they're going to withhold more money, right? So if you increase or if you better these metrics, there's money that's to be returned. How much? It's really hard to calculate. So you just consider those from the externalities. So you're like, I'm saving you this much plus some other stuff that I'm not even putting in here.
Yeah. Like the miscellaneous.
Exactly.
Thing happening. Yeah. That's incredible. Is that usually, because that's a lot of business hat that you had to kind of wear figuring those things out. Was that very foreign for you at that time? Or
it was.
Like, how did you get these numbers? Like, did you just interview a lot of doctors to get these data points?
I had to talk to a lot of people because I had an impression of what it looked like in the beginning. What I thought in the beginning was, I was like, maybe the people I'm saving money for is the insurance. So maybe this is something to sell insurance.
Yeah.
Because if insurance has to image less, then they're paying less, right? And then it wasn't until I talked to enough physicians who were familiar with the billing system at hospitals, because we have, as a general population, we have an outdated impression of how insurance works and how payments work within hospitals, right? Most things aren't paid per service anymore. A lot of things are called...
Like bundled?
Bundled payments. I had no idea about bundled payments until I talked to a doctor about this. And I was like, oh, so if the hospital can be more efficient, then the hospital's saving money. So maybe I sell this to the hospital. And then you sort of go down through this rabbit hole and you find different ways and different compensation structures until you get in front of somebody who actually makes these decisions. And so I got in front of that director of the Innovation Institute, who's very familiar with the finances of the hospital.
Yeah.
And then I got in front of the chief information officer, the CIO, who's very familiar with like the IT side of everything. And then once you start to ask your questions and you get a clearer picture, then you can really start to develop a business plan that works for your customers.
So what does, you are very early, right? What does like 2026 look like for you? What if I call you December 31st, 2026, inshallah, and it's like, yo, did success happen? What does success look like for the end of this year?
Success for 2026 is I've been able to get a pilot that can convert into a business agreement contract with the Henry Ford Health System.
Inshallah.
Inshallah, that would be success for me. If I can do that in 2026,
These are
I'll
like
take you out to some sushi. You know,
Ooh,
like
okay. These are big mountain steps, right? Because
Yeah.
going to your first paid customer.
yeah,
That's going to be very, very exciting.
yeah. So that's sort of my plan for this. Where
What's like the biggest hurdle between that reality and now?
I think it's
Because it seems like you have a lot of those dots in line, right? Like,
yeah, that's what it sounds like.
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Don't look under the hood.
Yeah.
You know, there's
This is the Willy Wonka chocolate factory.
yeah, exactly. There's a bunch of Oompa Loompas.
Like the text there, right? Is it already functioning? Is it?
You know, this answer looked very different like 2 weeks ago because
Yeah.
there's some recent FDA regulation changes.
Of course.
Which play favorable to what I'm trying to do.
Okay.
So I think the biggest hurdle right now is creating something that's intuitive enough and fits seamlessly into the physician's workflow. The hardest thing about selling something to a hospital that's clinically relevant or that's clinically related is that the people using your product are not the people buying your product. You know, the doctors are using this,
Yeah.
the hospital administrators are buying. So I need to convince physicians that this is something worthy of them using. It is going to make their life easier. And I need to present it in a way within their system, within their workflow of a very busy emergency room that this will, that it flows seamlessly, right? Getting the product to that point, I think, is the biggest hurdle. Once I can get to that point, I'm not too worried about integration with IT. I know that might take a lot of time. You know, there might be some delays there. I'm not too worried about.
But it's more so like just figuring it out, not so much creating something.
Yeah,
That makes
yeah,
sense.
it's exactly. And so to be honest, like a lot of this has moved from the technology aspect to it and the algorithm side of it to being like, how nice does it look?
Yeah.
You know, like how easy is it for them to sort of capture this information at first glance, right? And it's become like a UX research project, you know. But alhamdulillah. That's what I think the biggest hurdle is.
Yeah, I mean, I think UX and UI is definitely a whole nother ball game, especially when you're trying to figure out your customer, right? And I think this is, you know, kind of going back to what we're talking about in many parts of this conversation, is that there's the assumption of what you find as a pleasant UX experience, but you're not always the only customer, right?
Yeah.
What does your customer actually find as beneficial?
And then you have to be careful that you don't bias towards, you know,
Your
a specific
solution.
group. Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, if I only talk to Henry Ford Health physicians, I don't know if this product is going to work down the street at University of Michigan.
Yeah.
You know, maybe they do things differently over there. So I need to sample wide enough at different systems so that I can, who knows, maybe this is going to be something where there's a customizable solution per hospital system. Or maybe the way doctors work throughout all these other systems is similar enough that it can just be one solution. Who knows?
Well, you got a journey ahead of you.
Yeah,
But the hardest part is starting, and you've done
Yeah.
that. So
Absolutely.
we're excited to see what's here at the end of 2026 and beyond
Inshallah.
for Luminar, inshallah. But, you know, I appreciate you joining the Caravan podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Wintry Boston Saturday of Super Bowl weekend.
Alhamdulillah.
Got a team you're in for? Or?
Oh man, the lines are out.
No, yeah.
The lines are out. I'm out.
Yeah.
You know?
Cowboys have never been in, so I can dream. But yeah, Dr. Hashem, thank you so much for
Thank you so
joining
much
us
for
here on the
having me.
Caravan podcast.
No, thank you.